Hello, everyone. My name is McKenzie Kane with the National Sports Media Association here at the 64th Awards Ceremony and National Convention, and I have the privilege of being joined here by legendary sports broadcaster Andrea Kremer. Thank you for taking the time to sit down with me.
It is my pleasure. I'm trying to process the word legendary. It makes me feel old, but that's okay. No, it's great to be here with you, McKenzie.
Maybe iconic is better, but
I'll take iconic. Yeah, I'll take iconic.
And we are here for a very special reason. You are being inducted into the National Sports Media Association's Hall of Fame. What emotions does that invoke in you?
Oh, well, the first thing that comes to mind is looking at the people who have preceded me, because it is a veritable who's who of sports broadcasting, sports writing, sports media. It's really amazing. And then to go in with the truly iconic Joe Buck and my fellow Philly guy, Jason Stark, it's really wonderful. But I must tell you that as much of an honor as it is, the best thing is having my son present me tonight. So I'm pretty much looking forward to that the most.
Well, if you wouldn't mind just taking me to that moment in your life when you knew this was the career path you wanted to go down professionally.
Oh, wow. Well, you know, that's a very interesting question, because I've loved sports since I'm really, really young. And back then, there just weren't many little girls who really liked sports. And the best thing I had going for me, as I see a little bit in you, is that I had supportive parents. So my parents didn't think it was too strange that cute little Andy loved football. And they would buy me books, and we went to all the games. And I did this really, I guess, looking back, it's very prophetic, but I guess, and maybe it wasn't too strange back then, but the week of the Super Bowl, I grew up in Philadelphia, I would cut out all of the articles from the Philadelphia Inquirer, the now defunct Philadelphia Bulletin, and the New York Times, and I'd paste them on a piece of paper, and the morning of the game, I would basically present a scouting report to my parents. I'm about 9, 10 years old at this point, and so I was either doomed to be a PR person or a journalist. But again, my parents supported me, and I never thought that I would be in this career, because there wasn't anybody doing it. And it's from the department of, you have to see it to be it. You have to see it to believe it. And there just wasn't anybody doing it. So I love sports, and I played 3 sports, and I had all sorts of other activities, but it just never occurred to me that I would be able to make a career out of this until I was really, really much older.
Now, there are a lot of firsts associated with your name and with your career path. First female broadcasting duo, first nationally televised program. What does it mean to you to be a woman in sports?
Well, when I was starting out, there just weren't very many. So I was the first female. In those days, for NFL Films, our titles were producer, director, writer, editor, which was an amazing job to have, because you're like your own production company, and you learn so much, and it was really an incredible experience. And then I get to ESPN, and I'm their first female correspondent. And what I learned was you have to kind of keep the blinders on, because I go back, let me go back for a second. The first job I had in sports, I was the sports editor of the largest weekly newspaper in Pennsylvania, the Mainline Chronicle in Ardmore, Pennsylvania. And this was 1983, and I was doing a story on Eagles wide receiver Mike Quick, who was going to his first Pro Bowl. And in those days, women were not allowed in the locker room on non-game days. So I had to get special dispensation from the Eagles to go in and interview Mike Quick. So I go in, it's the day after the season, it's a Monday, guys are in there cleaning out their locker, and Mike's sitting in one locker, and I'm sort of just sitting adjacent to him, and I don't even think I started rolling my recorder yet, and we're just talking. And finally, he kind of looks at me and goes, "Well, you really know what you're talking about." And I kind of had one of those duh moments. Fast forward to 2017, when I'm inducted into the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame, and I told that story, and Mike Quick's in the audience, and he's laughing with acknowledgement. So what I learned is that you have to channel out the noise, because if you think, oh my God, I'm the first, it can become so intimidating and such a pressure that it becomes a barrier, and I never wanted to do that. I just figured, I'm gonna work my butt off. No one is gonna work harder than me. No one is gonna be more prepared than me. And I'm going to let the work speak for itself. And yes, I had a number of setbacks because I was a woman, times when I did not get an opportunity, and I had people that literally told me it was because I was a woman. That would not happen today, so that makes me happy to see what advances have been made. What concerns me is that I see more women in the business, which just gladdens my heart, but I want them to be doing it the right way. I want them to be doing the right things. And what I mean by that is, I've always thought there's sort of two kinds of women that go into sports. There's the people who just love sports their whole life. They were little sports geeks, and wow, I get to write about it or report about it or commentate about it. And then there's women who go, I want to be on television. Sports looks like it'll be a cool thing. And they're typically the people who, when I speak with them, one of their first questions is, what's it like to go in the locker room? And I immediately, little red flags go off in my head, because I look at them very plaintively and go, being in the locker room is not a sexual experience, it's a workplace. And, just want to make sure that we know what our parameters are here. So just because there's more people, any minority doing it, it doesn't mean it's better. They still need to work as hard, work harder to prove that they're there because they belong, not because they're there due to their gender or their race.
And that's a lesson you get to teach the younger generation of women coming into the sports industry. Who was the one who taught you or gave you the advice or the mentor that just helped you along the way?
Well, interestingly, the greatest mentors in my career have always been men. Mm-hmm. And in some cases, men who literally sat with me and taught me certain skills, particularly in the production end. And I remember when the Me Too movement broke, and on one hand, myself and my peers of this certain generation, when we're reading about all these horrific things that Harvey Weinstein did and things of that nature, and we're kind of like, yep, check that one off. Oh yeah, that happened to me. Oh yeah. But the flip side of that is I didn't want Me Too to prevent men from still being mentors to young women. And it's difficult now because there is more of an awareness. Okay, if we're working late, is she gonna think I have any ulterior motives? When back then it was just sort of like, I just want to learn, teach me, I'm a sponge. So I think that until we get more women in the position that, say, I'm in, or a Pam Oliver, my dear friend, until you get more women who are in positions to mentor, mm-hmm. then we still need to rely on the men to do that. And the most important thing is having somebody that you can look to and that you can trust that's going to help you develop your career as you move it forward in the business.
Now, as someone who's covered games in a variety of sports, NBA, NFL, PGA, does your approach to how you strategize and prepare change at all with what sport it is you're covering?
No. I think preparation is preparation, whether you're going into a game, whether you're going into a long-form interview, whatever it is. I mean, obviously, there's different emphases. I mean, obviously, if, you mentioned before, Hannah Storm and I became the first full-time female booth to commentate on NFL games. I was the first full-time female NFL game analyst. So my preparation is going to be different for that in terms of who I talk to and the kind of things that I'm talking with them about. It's much more, whether you want to call it X and O related, strategy related, things that I know I can use to provide perspective during the game, during my analysis. That's going to be different than knowing that I'm going into a long-form interview with my main subject for a story for HBO Real Sports, where I'm examining anything from sexual assault to domestic violence to you name it. And the core preparation is the same in terms of trying to literally know as much as you can about your subject or your sport, but always remembering you have to be nimble. I mean, we joke, we'd have all these production meetings for Thursday Night Football, and then a game breaks out. Or you have all these strategy meetings for your interview, and you have all these questions, you've got 5 pages of questions, and then an interview breaks out. And you've got to pay attention, you've got to be nimble, you've got to be flexible. You can never just be wedded to your questions, just like you're not. You wrote down questions here, but not only are you not really looking at them, but you're listening to what I'm saying, you're playing off of that. And it's that ability to be flexible that is really going to make something strong.
I'm curious, with all of this experience in all of these different sports, did you find one interview or one game to be the most challenging in terms of maybe a difficult person to get an answer out of?
Well, I mean, there's always that, because people want you to see what they want you to see, and they want you to know what they want you to know. And you have to try to find ways to kind of cut through that. And so that's always a challenge. And I always tell young journalists that when somebody tells you something, the first thing that's got to go through your mind is, why is this person telling me this? Because do they have an agenda that they're trying to work? Is there something they're trying to get out there that they want to be made public? So, there's always sort of that healthy degree of skepticism, as I like to say. But I think that it's just a matter of never being wedded to one strategy or one thing, and knowing that your job as a journalist is to capture reality and to bring something to the audience. And that's what I always try to ask in my mind. What does the audience want to hear? What do they want to learn about? What does the audience want to know? During a game, before I started doing analysis, I kind of made this pact with myself that I wasn't going to just throw out all this football lingo. And the great John Madden had given me this amazing advice. He said, 90% of the commentators don't really know what they're talking about, and 99% of the audience doesn't either, but everybody thinks it just sounds so cool. So I can speak the language of football with the best of them, but my objective was, if I can use the terminology, but I can't explain it in 5 or 6 seconds, I shouldn't be using it. So if I'm going to be talking about ghost motion or jet sweep or cover zero or whatever it is, I need to be able to explain to the audience what that means, to provide context, to provide perspective for it. And so those are things that I always try to be cognizant of, is what does the audience want to know, what should they learn?
And with that being said, I'm curious what your thoughts are on the biggest rookie mistake you see young broadcasters make when covering sports.
Well, are we talking long-form journalism? Are we talking covering games? What specifically would you be referring to?
I would probably say covering games, or either maybe a misconception that when they're first getting into the industry, this is what people believe, but when they actually live it out, they understand something different. I guess from my perspective, what should I avoid when I am really trying to tap into the industry?
Well, I think that it's important to know, for anybody, but I do think particularly for women, never BS your way through anything. If you don't know something, just ask. And I think that gets you a long way further, because if you try to start talking about something maybe because it sounds good or you don't really know what it is, you're going to get exposed. And as a woman, I would like to tell you that after all these years, the double standard doesn't exist, but I would be incorrect. It just does. There's a certain segment of the population, that does not want to get its sports news from women. And to them, I say, I respect that, and that's fine, but we ain't going anywhere. And you can choose to listen or watch or not, and that's your prerogative. But I feel that when I was at ESPN, I had a very, very good relationship with the then offensive coordinator of the Minnesota Vikings, Brian Billick, who at that time would go on to coordinate, orchestrate the highest scoring offense in NFL history at that time. And then he went on to become the head coach and the Super Bowl winning head coach of the Baltimore Ravens. So I'd be in there for ESPN, and I'd be at the facility on a Saturday, just gathering information for all of my hits on Sunday. And then Brian and I would sit in his office, and he would basically give me a tutorial, because I'm a total geek, and I love it. And he would always say to me, I'll spend as much time with you as you want, as long as I can get home for my nap so that I can make it back to the hotel in time for when we have to report. And to me, it was never something I was going to be able to use on the air, but to me, as funny as it sounds, it was going to bring those X's and O's to life. And so he would be teaching me all this stuff, and then the next day I'd be sitting there and watching it develop in the game, and it was just, again, I'm a geek, it was so cool to see exactly what he was talking about playing out with the plays. And that was just an example of kind of this tireless nature that I had. And your past two questions, you've used the words, I'm curious about. And to me, that is the key. I was really curious about everything. And I still am to this day. And I think it is a quality that serves everybody so well, because if you're curious about it, chances are the audience is curious about it.
One of my biggest fears pursuing a career in sports broadcast, and I think it's a fear that many women have, is the process of balancing the family relationships with the career and just with regular relationships. Now, your story of the birth of your son is one of my favorites of all time.
I am every working woman's cautionary tale. Do not give birth 3,000 miles away from home when you're about to cover the Super Bowl. So yes, I always call it like my Dr. Phil moment. You know? But I mean, this is something that I'm going to mention a little bit in my speech tonight. I had a conversation recently with a younger woman about the notion of, can you have it all? Because that's what working mothers in particular aspire to. Can we have it all? So the first thing I say is define all. Mm-hmm. What does all really mean, okay? I remember being pregnant. I was like 8 months pregnant. And I don't think people inherently mean to be negative, but they are. And there are people that are going, oh my God, how are you going to continue working? How are you continue to travel and cover games and you're going to have a baby? And I go, you are right. I'm going to be the first working mother who travels in the history of the world. Oh my gosh. And you figure it out. And in my case, I had the most supportive husband, partner that you could ever wish for. And I think that that's really hugely important, because it's not just support, it's respect. Mm-hmm. He respected that I did want to have a child. We wanted to have a child, but I also had this career, which I was pretty devoted to as well. And I know it doesn't sound as though it's a concrete answer, but it always works out. Mm-hmm. It just does. It works out, because if you want it to work out and you work to make it work out as hard as you can, then it will. And listen, that's not to say that there aren't those working mommy moments, because I remember the first time my son rarely got a fever, rarely ever got a fever. And we lived in Los Angeles, and I was flying on a Friday night for a shoot I had in Miami the next day. My son wasn't a clingy kid, but I was kind of packing and getting ready, and he was being a little clingy, and I felt that he just felt warm. And I called the doctor, and the doctor said, it's probably not anything, but just, and I couldn't get on that plane. I couldn't do it. I called my producer, and I go, hey, you know what? I'll be on the plane first thing tomorrow morning, take the first flight out. You can basically hold down the fort, and I'll be there for the evening for what we have to shoot. But I wasn't getting on a plane because my kid it just wasn't right. And I 100% made the right decision. And life goes on, and work goes on, and that's, but I remember telling that story to one of my friends who had kids, and she said, welcome to your first official working mommy moment. And my career didn't suffer, the kid didn't suffer, so as I said, it all works out.
That's advice that I truly needed to hear, and I really appreciate you saying that.
I just don't think it has to be either or.
Yeah.
I just don't. And I will tell you this, until, this always sounds more obnoxious than I intended to sound, when I got inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2018, and seeing all the notes and social media posts and things, and private things that I got from people, particularly a lot of women, it occurred to me, based on what they were saying, that I guess I was the first or one of the first women working in the field to have a kid. There are plenty of women who are anchors or hosts and they had kids, but I traveled, and all of a sudden I've got a kid, and that was so that was really an adjustment that I had to make. And listen, I make no bones about it. I was pregnant 4 times. I had 3 miscarriages, and it sucked. It was the worst experience of my life. But I got pregnant when I was older, and I'm blessed beyond belief to have one healthy child. But at that time, 25% success rate for having a child is about what it was for women as they're approaching 40. So I'm just really lucky that I have a great kid.
And it was the first thing you mentioned when you hopped on the microphone, the fact that you're here with your son and he's going to be the one introducing you today. Just what emotions does that evoke?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's going to be. I haven't really. I've been so busy running around today, and we're recording this before the event, so I don't know how it's going to be, but it is by far. This will be the 5th Hall of Fame I'm going into, and I got 9 Emmys and a Peabody and every award and accolade you can possibly imagine, and there's nothing better than being Will's mom. There's nothing better. Nothing that's more fulfilling to me than knowing that I've got a child who, the way I feel about sports and that my husband feels about his industry, that my son feels about what he does, and that he's his own person. He's completely self-made. Nobody ever gave him anything. Or he tries to tell me, when I tell him he works too hard, he kind of gives me one of those looks. And he goes, well, you're going to pay for my therapy, Mom. And I go, whoa, let me tell you this. There's a lot of kids of highly successful parents, and they're slackers. So don't be blaming this crap on me, all right? You're your own person. So, but yeah, I am, it's my pride and joy, man. It absolutely is.
Now, before I let you go, I often end my conversations with people asking for the piece of advice they want to give young aspiring broadcasters going into the industry. But hearing that being a mom, being Will's mom, is your most proud accomplishment, what piece of mom advice would you give just the people watching this or listening to this? Yeah,
well, I thought you were gonna use the what advice would you give to your younger self, because I've thought about that one a lot. Mm-hmm. And I have a really specific example, a really specific answer to that, which I think is important, and I think it can be instructive potentially to young people. So You know, part of being in the news business is you're always chasing the next story. There's the next game. There's the next big interview you have to get. There's always next, next, next. And my husband would say to me, you know, you just got Michael Jordan's exclusive interview. Can't you just enjoy that for a moment? And there's a part, and I'm not alone in this, you're only as good as your last whatever, your last podcast, your last interview, your last whatever it is. And I think I lost out on a lot until 2008, Beijing. I'm covering swimming. And Michael Phelps is on the cusp of becoming the first athlete to win 8 gold medals. And this may be a little TMI here, but I remember very specifically, I'm getting in the shower that morning, and I'm thinking, wow, I'm going to have the opportunity to be this teeny tiny piece of history tonight. Because you gotta remember, this is an Olympics where Bob Costas said, all Michael Phelps does is eat, sleep, swim, and talk to Andrea. And so Michael Phelps is gonna get out of that pool, hopefully having won an 8th gold medal, and take like 10 steps and then talk to me. And I said, you better soak this all in. You better take advantage of that, because this is history. And I did. Now, did it affect my performance? Did it affect my preparation? Did it affect my professionalism? Not one iota. But I took in that moment. I allowed myself to do something I'd never really done before. And then 6 months later, I'm on the sidelines of my first Super Bowl. Let me tell you, when you're looking at that camera and there's 110 million people watching, it can scare the you-know-what out of you. And again, I took in the moment and realized that this was a very, very special thing. And it's important to do that. And it's hard to think that you can take advantage of that moment while still being this hard-nosed reporter. But it took me too long to figure out that that's possible. And so my goal for tonight is to try to take it in as much as I can and actually put my advice to its best use.
Well, Andrea, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me and giving me your words of wisdom.
Well, if you're the next generation, I think we're going to be in great hands. That's all I can say.
I really
so thanks so
appreciate
much for having me.
And I wish you the best of luck, and I hope you truly get the chance to soak up everything this night has to offer.
Thank you.